Welcome to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and I'm really happy and delighted to welcome back to our airwaves a former host of this program, former president of Middlesex Community College, and now president of West Central Initiative in Minnesota, Dr. Anna Wasesha. Anna, thank you for joining me today.
I couldn't be happier. It's to see you on my screen, Steve, and it's really a lot of fun to be back on the show.
Well, we're so glad to have you back. And it's hard to believe that you left Middlesex in the Middletown area 5 years ago.
It's incredibly hard for me to believe. But, for example, pre-COVID too, right? Back in those days, we never would have imagined that we'd be in the circumstances we're in today.
And really, how has that impacted the work that you do? You live and work in a fairly rural community, but it's way spread out.
It's super spread out. So I have 9 counties in my region, and also a portion of a Native Nation, White Earth Nation, which is where Winona LaDuke lives. And the scale of it is those 9 counties are 1.5 times the size of the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
225,000 people, although we haven't gotten the census count yet, but not a lot of people. There is one relatively urban place called Moorhead. It's a twin city with the city of Fargo, North Dakota, but everything else is small and quite bucolic.
I can imagine. And I've also seen some of your text messages where you're showing me photographs of it being quite cold there this time of year too.
Well, we have to brag about that, right? I mean, we can survive weather where the actual real temperature is 35 degrees below zero and the wind chills are dangerous and they're like 55, 60 degrees below zero. Yeah, it gets cold.
Okay, so I won't feel too bad about our recent weather here in Connecticut. So West Central Initiative, if I understand it right, is really a community foundation of sorts, correct?
We're a community foundation. I'll tell you the sort of quick summary of it. The McKnight Foundation, which is the 3M company, money from William McKnight. They, in the 1980s, you may remember Willie Nelson doing farm aid concerts. The agriculture sector in Minnesota began to collapse for a lot of reasons we don't need to go into, but it was really in tough shape. And also mining on the north end, 3M is Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. And so there's a lot of, the Great Mesabi Range is in northern Minnesota. So mining also was collapsing. And the McKnight Foundation wanted to do something to, kind of put a parachute out and try to help people who were really hurting. And it was so remarkable. It was 1986. The stories, they went around in their Cadillac, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because there are a lot of old Ford trucks, out in this part of the state. And they decided that they wanted to set up 6 community foundations in what we call Greater Minnesota, because they didn't know the people and they didn't know the systems. And they didn't want to make a mistake. They just wanted to make sure that they were being helpful. So now it's 36, 37 years ago, and these foundations were all independent. So we do different kinds of things, but we still exist and still receive funding from them. And we're a very important rural strategy for a metropolitan-based foundation. So I'm really grateful for that relationship. But here's the other kind of funny thing about West Central Initiative is that we are also the regional development organization, which means we do planning work for the Economic Development Administration, and we do transportation planning for the state of Minnesota. So we're a unicorn in the group because the other planning groups are not community foundations, and the other community foundations are not regional planning organizations. And I am ecstatic about that because I think it gives us the capacity to really work on complicated, what feels like unsolvable problems in our society and our economy, because we got, 2 toolboxes, right? And some of those tools are pretty much the same kind of interventions. So yeah, it's great. I love it. I really love it.
Great. Well, I think being the former host of the show, we have to take a quick break. And when we come back, more with Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of West Central Initiative in Minnesota. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College here on WLAS WMRD. Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, and joining me today is Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of the West Central Initiative in Minnesota and former president of Middlesex Community College. And it's so delightful to catch up with you again, Anna. And before the break, we were talking about the work of West Central Initiative, and it seems like as both a community foundation and a workforce board that to have all these different, like you called them, toolkits underneath your belt really makes a lot of sense in trying to serve the communities that you work with.
It does. So let me put it this way. I feel like it knits together both sides of the brain. The planners, it's workforce development is one of the big issues, but there are a lot of others. There's like housing and of course transportation, bike paths and trails, safe routes to school, Main Street revitalization, and childcare. Childcare is huge. And I mean, what I appreciate about that is people are starting to appreciate that they're all interconnected. Like, right, if you have a workforce shortage and you don't have affordable housing or you don't have childcare, there's some other issues you have to attend to. But the planning group, they do a lot of digesting of numbers, right? They're analysts, right? And in the philanthropy side, we're longtime investors in community solutions. And it is so helpful to have both of those things going on at the same time, because we just get a better read on where we might be more effective.
If an organization in the communities that you serve was interested in working with West Central Initiative, what's the funding process look like?
Well, we're changing, I mean, in terms of grants, so we make grants, which is what you would expect from a foundation. But here's the other kind of amazing thing to me. We make loans. We have a loan portfolio of maybe about $12 million out in the community. And we make two kinds of loans on the whole. One group is called gap financing. So we partner with a bank, and that means that some of the risk is shouldered by a foundation, and foundations can take more risk, right? So we're a good partner in those sorts of things. And then we have what we call access to capital, which is much larger grants where we are the funder, we are the lender. So we have that whole apparatus, and then we give grants. And since you said 5 years pre-COVID, right? Well, we have changed up not only what we fund, but how we fund. So the kind of what we fund has moved toward two priorities, one being things that fall underneath sustainability and climate change, and the other falling under diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now we have other kinds of grants, but those are the big buckets that we give grants. And how we do that is we're into our second round of what is called participatory grant making. So the people who are from the communities who will benefit from the grants we make are involved in the decisions about which grants to make.
And, you mentioned sustainability and climate change, obviously something that was a deep passion of yours. It has been, but something that you brought to Middlesex Community College when you were here as president. And it must be very gratifying for you to be in a position to work with people who share that passion and be able to support projects that are important to all of you.
It's incredibly important. And so, naturally, having come from higher education, I look at a region and I think, I'm looking for pillars of these communities, and I've got a bunch of colleges and universities, right? So just those I love those pillars. One of them, the University of Minnesota Morris, it's a campus of the State Research One institution. They have distinguished themselves for the last 20 years in environmental work. They were like the initial signatories on the president's climate commitment. Their campus is off the grid. They have big turbines. They've got biodigesters. They just do everything really, really well. And so we work with them a lot. And so how are we working with them right now? Well, one thing was I was really lucky. I was invited to go to Germany with them and a delegation of other Minnesotans to visit climate smart municipalities in Germany. The Europeans are way ahead of us in a lot of things. Like, for example, basically redesigning cities to support transit by bicycle. There's just so many good things about that. And then the other piece is we're working with them to try to make sure that there are positive stories about climate change. That if we're trying to be optimistic and hopeful, we've got to give credit to the things that are really working. Can you imagine having? It's not a big campus. It's probably got 2,000 or 3,000 students. Dormitories, obviously, athletic fields. Actually, they've got horses and stables, but they are off the grid. Can you?
That is hard to imagine.
So every campus could be off the grid. Yeah, right. Well, just imagining how much. First of all, how many people you influence when you influence college students, right? I mean, just how many students are enrolled in colleges in the state of Connecticut. And if where they went from their hometowns and maybe from across the world, where they went to school was completely off the grid, was not contributing to global warming, and in fact, the kind of behaviors of composting your solid waste and all the, reducing your reliance on, certainly on fossil fuel is a thing of the past. Electric vehicles. I mean, there's so many things that they can do. And then they carry that with them when they graduate. This is why working in colleges and universities is a really wonderful gift. I'd like to be able to influence generations of people.
So the work you were describing too with the West Central Initiative, I mean, you really, if I can just simplify it, it sounds like you're taking a really systems-based approach to this. You see things as being interconnected, interdependent with each other. Also gets to what you're saying with working with colleges and universities. If students see that this is how we, as an ideal way to run our communities and our society, then that does set the stage for fundamental positive change down the road. Like you said, some positive stories about climate change. If it's all gloom and doom, that's not going to motivate anybody to do anything.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So
right. Exactly.
Here's how we can partner with all these different organizations in our geographic area to have a significant positive impact on how we live.
I always say, when you look at a basic city newspaper, you're going to have the front page news, you're going to have local news. You have a sports page. You have the whole pages and pages devoted to sports. You have business, and on the weekend, it's usually things like, weddings and fashion and things like recipes. Apart from telling you what the temperature is, there's very little in there about climate change. And yet it is the existential crisis of our times, not to be hanging crepe on the issue, but it is really, really important. And we need to think about media, and here we are on radio, but there are all these media channels now. And how can we use them to be part of the solution?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think climate change, like many other things today, has been politicized. We're sharply divided on issues like climate change, on whether or not to get vaccinated. How do you see, as someone who is involved, you've been involved as a college president, you're president of an institution like West Central Initiative, you're highly engaged in making sure people express their choice through the ballot box. How do you think we turn this around?
I think there's two things. One is refuse to be silenced, and two, build strong alliances with others so you're not out there alone. I mean, I think it's really, I feel of course I have a lot of concerns. It's a deep well of concerns, but for as many people as may think that climate change is some kind of global plot of the world scientists to destroy the economies of the world, there are most people. Here's something that I learned just the other day. I'm so glad I lived in Connecticut, because I have pictures in my mind of these great institutions and these amazing people who are doing really important work. Yale has a project on climate change communication. And they tell you, I mean, they have these statistics, 80% or 90% of the people believe that this is happening and that we can do something about it. And then they're thinking about how you pitch those messages so they will do something about it. So I feel, just having met one person who works for the YPCCC, that I have an ally. There's somebody else out there doing this work. And it turns out Alan Alda has a school in one of the state universities in New York. It's some school or program, and it's talking about science, how you communicate about science, right? And he uses a lot of things like comedy, and I don't think he's actually instructing, but the school does, comedy and improv, teaching you how to kind of be able to bounce back and forth on your 2 feet. So when you're talking with people and you're having to talk with people who don't believe that this is real or substantial, you've got some, again, tools. And I mean, I'm cheered by the fact that there are those people out there who are, including Alan Alda, who are providing support to systems that will help us. We have to learn. We have a lot to learn about this. But I also think that the idea that civics education, there are lots of parts of it. I had a really great experience a few months recently, because there is a man named Alan Page, he's a former Vikings athlete, Vikings football team. He became a Minnesota Supreme Court justice. I mean, the amazing thing to me is he went to law school while he was playing pro football. And how is that possible? Yeah. And as he got into his career, he began a foundation, and he has been providing support to elementary and secondary schools that educate students of color. to keep them engaged and get them on the path to success. And he has proposed, along with Neil Kashkari, who is the chair of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, they proposed this thing that they're deeming or terming the Page Amendment. It basically addresses the achievement gap in Minnesota, and the premise is that you have to change the constitutional language. There's two things that they're achieving with this. One is they're drawing out a really fine point on this is unacceptable, and it's been going on forever. And we've thrown billions of dollars at it, and it's not budging. In fact, it's getting worse. And by the way, you can go on the Federal Reserve site, pull up your school district, and look at the verbal and quantitative skills, whether or not students are at grade level, and then graduation rates. And it's jaw-dropping, eye-opening. So they're doing a whole lot of work by going around a community. So I had this opportunity to get back to it. So I could say, in 1947-48, there was the Truman Commission on Higher Education. And one of the most important things about it was it said there's no relationship between income and intelligence. And most people in this country could benefit from a higher education, that ability to benefit test. And then you go 40 years later, it's a nation at risk. If a foreign, and this is under Ronald Reagan, if a foreign nation foisted this system of education on us, we would consider it to be an act of war. And drawing out the fine point that the Truman Commission after World War II, they really regarded education as national defense, right? And then you forward again 40 years or so, whatever it is, and you get the crucible moment where there's this just analysis of how we've gotten rid of so much civic education. So we have people on the street, you stop them and say, how does a bill become law? How many senators do you have? And people don't know the answer to that because they never had to learn any of that. So going back to the nation at risk, one of the things they say is that if we continue offering education this way, we risk having a very small percentage of our population understanding and being able to use science, and the vast majority of people being unable to understand and use science. And where are we today?
Well, we do need to take a quick break. This is fascinating stuff. It's always just such a joy to speak with you. Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of West Central Initiative. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College on WLAS WMRD. Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, together with my guest, Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of the West Central Initiative in Minnesota, but Anna may be familiar to you, our listeners, as the former president of Middlesex Community College and host of the show, actually. So Anna, you and I worked together for 6 years, you as president of the college and I as its dean of academic affairs, and our conversations often took on what you used to call jumping from one lily pad to another. I think we're doing that here on the radio for our listeners.
Well, it's a great skill to acquire. So if we're helping demonstrate how you do that, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. One thought just leads to the next. And one of the things I wanted to get to in our conversation was recently the Middlesex Community College Foundation recognized you with its Legacy Award. And I think one of your enduring legacies is our honors program, which actually has a fund named after you. But talk about the honors program and what that means to you.
Well, it means everything, absolutely everything. It first of all, it puts to the test everything I believe and everything I just was quoting, right, about the Truman Commission report and the idea that people, that college wasn't for everybody and you can be overeducated. That, there across the course of my lifetime, there have been things that have just stuck in my craw. And given the world we live in today, I'm not sure it's possible to be overeducated. In fact, I think we're all undereducated. I mean, good heavens. I mean, we need to do and know a lot more than we do. So I'm a crusader for community colleges, right? So the idea that you would think that some people just can't be expected to do rigorous academic work and, maybe someday figure out how to, land a plane on Jupiter is offensive to me. I mean, I have always believed no matter who you are, if you had a decent tutor and a good book and you were marooned on a desert island, you could figure out calculus. Don't give me this, I can't figure it out. You just need to take the time. I believe that, but I had that validated in the prison education program where I went to the class and the students had been reading a novella by Kafka And it was brilliant. It was about being imprisoned and not knowing why, not knowing what you were charged with. And these were individuals, some of whom had done really terrible things and were going to be in prison for a long time, but they had nothing else to do for the most part. And they had great literature and a teacher from, in that case, it was a Wesleyan professor who really pushed them to think hard, think deeply, think about your own life, think how this works. And I believe we can all do that, So it's just extraordinarily important to me that the students at Middlesex have that opportunity to get pushed. I think being pushed is great. Yeah. And pushed and have, reach your highest potential, figure out you can have ambitious goals. There's so much about, I don't know, society in general. It's like, don't get ahead of your skis. And I just reject all of that. Yeah. Get as far ahead of your skis as you can. In fact, we have an initiator fellowship program at my institution, West Central Initiative. And one of the fellows has a project where she's working with a biodigester on the Microsoft campus in Fargo, North Dakota, which, news to all your listeners, is the second largest Microsoft campus in the US. Hard to believe. Yep. Fargo, North Dakota. So they have 1,800 employees, and they eat there. They eat food, and then they have food waste, and it goes into this biodigester, and it's going to end up being fertilizer on the fields. So there's a story about her in the Star Tribune this past weekend, and one of the comments, I always still open the comments because I want to know, said, this woman is 500 years ahead of her time. Everybody should be pushed to be 500 years ahead of their time. Yeah,
absolutely.
Anything is possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think kind of tying that thought to the honors program at Middlesex, I think that inspires students to try to get maybe not 500 years ahead of their time, but at least ahead of their time. The work that they do in the Convivium, which is also inspired by an idea that you brought to the college, has been extraordinary. And I'm so glad that you've been able to, thanks to the miracle of Zoom that we're using today, to be able to participate from a distance. And but it has proven your belief that these students can do extraordinary work. And I should tell you that I have requests from 2 students to write recommendation letters for them to transfer. And these students are intending to transfer to Yale, Connecticut College, Boston University, Wesleyan, and they're setting their sights very high. And I'm so proud of them. But I don't know if they would have done that if not for the honors program and our belief that we put in them.
Well, choosing a college and forming an identity is not some. It's an art, and a lot of it is just neglected. In fact, this is another thing that sticks in my craw, which is that the planning profession, the planners in Connecticut might feel upset by what I'm going to say, but we use so many really old, decades of 50-year-old indicators to figure out if we've done well. And, the number of new jobs created, for example, without paying any attention to the quality of those jobs and what it means to the people who actually have to have them. So, this is sort of the living wage argument, but we're three-dimensional people. Mm-hmm. And we, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I mean, that they weren't kidding when they included that in the founding documents. And yet we don't pay very much. We don't pay enough attention to that. And so the college choice and the choice of major and the choice of career and the choice of life partners and all of that, those are really complicated, and there's no book or we need advisors and mentors and people who love us and care about us to guide us. And I mean, this is what the word mentor means. So that's why that's another piece about the honors program, is these students have really good mentors in the folks who advise the program and teach the courses. Mm-hmm. And you too.
I have a little bit of an influence, sure. I mean,
yeah.
So if you think about mentors, is there a person that pops into mind who was one of your most important mentors in your life?
Oh, yeah. In different ways, right? Because we have uneven development as human beings. So I had teachers who believed in me. I started out in I went to a girls' academy, high school, Catholic school in St. Louis. And I just went in like I was just a normal person. I was a normal person. And a teacher said, you should be in the honors program in English. And I ended up majoring in English in college. Language is super important to me. And she believed in me, I mean, that's what it is. It's like, somebody believes in me. This is I need to live up to that. And I can live up to it. And how do you know that when you're 13 or 15 or 25?
Right.
So
Based on everything you said before that, it makes me think that you would agree with me that, by having that kind of experience, having somebody believe in you at a younger age, that it's our responsibility now, being older, to give that same gift to someone coming along behind us.
you betcha, by golly. Yeah, I know. My mother, she had her limitations. I'm sure I did I know I did as a mother, but she used to say, you can't teach people responsibility if you don't give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that you can extrapolate from that. You can't teach them to be successful if you don't help them with opportunities where they can succeed. So yeah, I'm a pushy person in that way. I think you got to push people. Yeah,
I agree. Well, in the little bit of time we have left, Anna, I know there are a number of people perhaps listening to us who remember you fondly from your time as president of Middlesex. What's maybe the one thing you miss most about the Middletown area?
I have lifelong friends, and I miss them. Although Zoom, is a silver lining. Mm-hmm. I miss the how the green and the trees and that campus is really beautiful. I mean, that's mm-hmm. another thing. Like the woods and the reservoir at the top of the hill is so beautiful. And, the Hindu temple across the road, and it's just a very beautiful campus. And there's a real sense of community there. I believe that. I mean, it's like a small town, mm-hmm. and every small town needs a main street, and it needs a rec center, and it needs a place where you can just meditate and look out at the green world, and you got it all. So yeah, I miss it a lot.
Well, Dr. Anna Wassesha, president of West Central Initiative in Minnesota, former president of Middlesex Community College. I should tell you too that there's that saying, you have big shoes to fill when you leave a place, and that's true. Although I think I've decided to maybe find a different pair of shoes, so I don't have to fit your mold exactly. But no, you left me some big shoes to fill, and you are well regarded in this community. People always ask me how you're doing. So
thank you.
So you certainly had an impact here at the college and in Middletown. So thank you so much for joining me on Middlesex Moments today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Steve.
And I'd like to thank all of you, our listeners, for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. As always, please visit us in person. Remember to wear a face mask if you do. Our main campus is located at 100 Training Hill Road here in Middletown. Or you can visit us at our Meriden Center located at Platt High School, where we have classes 4 nights a week. And of course, you can visit us online 24/7 at mxcc.edu. For everybody at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we'll see you next week.